Hello there, World of Tankers. I'm Blitz, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the absolutely worst Tier 10 tank to currently grind in the game. And as you can see from this replay, it is the FE2-5B183, a British Tier 10 tank destroyer. Now, this tank used to be very strong in the game. In fact, it was one of the strongest Tier 10 tank destroyers about a year and a half ago. But it received a big nerf, and quite a few updates really turned this tank from when it was one of the strongest and most formidable tanks to come against into something that really isn't that much of a threat. So in this video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about it, some of the reasons why it's just not super strong anymore. So grab a bag of popcorn and stay tuned. The first and main reason this tank is so bad is about a year and a half ago, Wargaming nerfed the tank. And the reason they nerfed it is because the public just absolutely despised it. It was the most played tank in Tier 10. And because of that, pretty much every game you'd play, you would come up against one or even two 183s. And when you're on a map like Dead Rail, and there's one camping up at the back, and because it has good dispersion values, I think it was like 0.326, which is definitely not bad, it could sit at the back of the map and just snipe you every time you'd pull over the ridge, or when you tried to push heavy side. So because of that, a lot of players would call this tank overpowered. They would say it's not fair, you can't really play the game in enjoyment, you're always in fear. And it came to a point that so many people hated this tank and called it overpowered that Wargaming actually had to end up nerfing it, and they nerfed it really hard. They pretty much turned every statistic and flipped it upside down. For the tank having a 183mm cannon, before the nerf it had pretty decent dispersion values and aiming time, but as soon as that nerf came, they pretty much doubled the values on both. As well, the tank had an excellent camouflage rating, which meant that you could actually get into a bush, act like a tank destroyer, and snipe at the back of the map and not get spotted. Nowadays, when you run a 183, yeah, you pretty much get spotted even if you don't shoot and you are behind a bush from like 300 meters away, which isn't very fun. And the last thing they nerfed on the tank was the traverse speed. Before, you were actually able to turn faster than pretty much every tank that was trying to flank you, which I definitely feel was a little overpowered, and they pretty much nerfed that to the ground as well, making the traverse speed and horsepower to ton ratio about 50% worse. And to this date, that is the largest nerf that has ever happened in Blitz history and probably will continue to be. And that's just because it nerfed every single statistic so badly that it changed the playstyle of it drastically. Before, where you could confidently sit behind a bush knowing that you're probably not going to be spotted when you're shooting at somebody, nowadays you have to be constantly worrying about the tanks that are flanking. If they have a Sheridan on their team, are you going to get spotted? Every movement on the map is something that you have to worry about when you're running a 183 that you really wouldn't have to worry about before. And the tank definitely did deserve a nerf. It was way too strong before that. You shouldn't have the ability to just sit at the back of the map, not really do anything, and just come out with a 6,000, 7,000 damage game. And even after they nerfed it, I still felt the tank was pretty strong and playable, because I made a video on it, I think I still even have it posted on my channel, where I had two 6,000 games saying that, hey, you can run this tank fine, you just have to run it a little bit more aggressive now, which kind of sounds funny because they nerfed it. But because they nerfed the dispersion and the aiming time, I countered that by running the tank a little bit closer in combat, so that way the aiming time and dispersion values didn't matter as much. And when I did that, the tank seemed to do fine. You can still whip a heavy tank's hit points 1,000 off very easily as soon as you see them shoot. Just pull out, snap them, and back up. So because of that, the tank was still decent in my opinion. But then Wargaming decided to add this little update called the AGTM update. And this added the tanks, which you guys all know, the T92E1 and the Sheridan. And those two tanks pretty much made the 183 absolutely useless in the current matchmaker. And the reason of that being is, first of all, they're extremely quick, and they're also not huge targets. And the 183 does not do well with either of those two variables when trying to hit a target. As well, the T92E1 has the weirdest armor I've ever seen in game, and it bounces the most shells, more than most medium tanks that I come up against. And the Sheridan is completely covered in spaced armor, so you can't even hit a Hess shell on it if you're lucky enough to even hit the tank in the first place. So not only are these tanks very hard to hit, very small targets, and pretty much impenetrable, then you have to remember that they're light tanks, they have excellent camouflage ratings, they have great view range, so they're easily going to spot your 183, and as well, they got missiles, and they do 560 average damage. And when you have a tank like the 183 that has absolutely zero armor, it's huge, very easy to spot, you can just think how easy it is to pick apart a 183. And I'm guessing all of you guys that have AGTMs just know how easy a 183 is. It's like sticking a worm on a hook. So because of that, the 183 is completely useless now, because as I said before, I would sort of run the tank a little bit more aggressive, and because of that, I would do pretty well in it because I wouldn't have to worry about the aiming time or the dispersion. But how are you supposed to run this tank aggressive if you're going to get spotted by a Sheridan and lose 1/3 of your hit points by one shell flying at you or a missile coming at you, and then the entire team wrecking you because you got spotted? And that's the issue with the tank, is now you can't run it aggressive, so now you're sitting at the back of the map. But if you sit at the back of the map and you shoot at somebody and they still have a light tank on their team, chances are you're still going to get spotted and then killed. And that's why the tank is so bad currently. And then just a couple days ago, they added the last update, which was the heavy tank update, where they gave all the tier 10 heavies hit point buffs. Now, you can imagine that when a 183 could originally two-shot a tank like the Chieftain Mark 6, T95E6, IS-7, now you can't do that. So now these tanks that you can normally take out with 2 shells if you're sitting at the back of the map and you're lucky enough to even hit them in the first place, now you can't even take them out in 2 shells. So now they're going to survive longer, they're going to be able to take you out now, and that little hit point buff made this tank even a little bit more worse than it already was. And the craziest thing about this tank is 8,370 players have played this tank in the last 90 days, which makes it the most played tier 10 currently, and it's always been the most played tier 10 in the whole game. The thing I find funny, though, is it's the most played tier 10 in the game, except it has the lowest average statistical win rate at 49.58%. In fact, it's the only tier 10 tank that has an average win rate below 50%, which is pretty impressive to get below that number. And the reason I feel that this tank is still played so much and it does so bad is because newer players go for this line. They see, hey, a 183, it does 930 damage, 1330 with high explosive. Why would I get a dinky little 6E2A that does 310 when I can practically one-shot people in a 183? And that's what I'm guessing a lot of newer players think when they see this tank, and they grind down this line. And by the way, the 183 line is probably one of the worst lines you can possibly grind down. I ground down this line when I first started playing the game about 6-7 years ago now, and it was still an awful grind then, and nowadays with all the power creep and the Sheridans and everything like that, it's even worse. The Tortoise is pretty much outmatched by the Conway, which is a better version of it in my opinion, and then you have tanks like the AT-15 that does 200 average damage at tier 8, not really a threat, you can pen it with most premium ammo. AT-7, it's a pretty strong tank, but again, very easy to take out, especially with all the overpowered tanks at tier 7. The only one that's really strong is the AT-8 and the AT-2, and that's the quickest part of the grind. They all go 20, except for the 183, which goes about 25 on average. So the grind is awful. You're not going to do well in the entire line. You're going to hate the game while you're trying to get this tank. And as soon as you spend all this time grinding the tank, and you're thinking it's going to be this spectacular vehicle, you find out that it's absolutely awful, and you're doing the worst than you would have done in a tier 8. Now, personally, I would suggest that if one of you guys are newer and you're thinking about going for the 183, you don't have the tank yet, don't even bother going for it until they buff the tank, because it definitely deserves a buff, 100%. But the reason Wargaming isn't buffing the tank is because they know the community hates it so much. So if Wargaming buffed this tank, everybody would complain, because the people that don't really understand maps that well are the ones that really complain the most about nerfing this tank, because what usually happens is when a 183 was ran, even before the nerf, there's only a couple key spots it would normally sit. Like on Dead Rail, it's either going to sit right at that rock next to spawn with the bush, or it's going to sit all the way on the hill that covers both of the heavy tank sides. And that's pretty much all a 183 would do on that map, is sit there. So if you were running a heavy tank, or a medium, or anything like that, and you probably guessed if they have a 183, it's going to be in one of those two bushes. Why are you driving over the ridgeline? And then those people that drive over the ridgeline and get shot by that 183, and it doesn't get spotted, and they called overpowered, how is that fair that the tank's overpowered if you're the one that made a mistake? If you drove over the ridgeline and an E4 shot you, or an E5 shot you for 400, you wouldn't complain because it's an E5, and, you know, the E5 took off 400. But if it's a 183 and you make a mistake, that's where people get mad, because a 183 doesn't let you get forgiven for making a mistake, and that's why I think the tank is pretty cool. But as I said, it definitely deserves a buff. Wargaming nerfed the tank way too hard, and with all the additions of the Sheridan and everything else like that, the vehicle was nerfed way too hard. And while all the other tank destroyers in the game pretty much have received buffs, for example, the WZ-111 GFT, Object 268 got a gun arc buff, same as the Jagdpanzer as well. I'm pretty sure Jagdpanzer got more accurate when turning. Pretty much all the tier 10 tank destroyers did get buffs, except for this one. So it definitely needs a buff, however, I don't think one will be coming. This is my little review slash rant on the 183 and why it's just the absolute worst tank to currently grind in the game. So definitely stay clear of the tank if you don't have it, wait for Wargaming to buff it or something else like that, because it's not even fun to run it, and you do get the occasional hash, but really it's not worth it when you lose 20 games to get one good shot out. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As always, make sure to smash that like button down below if you did. If you didn't, you know what to do. Let me know in the comments down below why you didn't like it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done already. We're going crazy in subscribers. We're almost at 6,000 already, so I want to thank all you guys for the support. If you want to help me out on Patreon, make sure to click that link as well in the description down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.